Hi everyone, welcome back to World War Map Intelligence, and tonight we begin with a story that is shaking the foundations of global stability. US-Israel war with Iran explodes. Strait of Hormuz crisis triggers global oil shock, a development that analysts warn could mark the beginning of the most dangerous Middle East escalation in decades. Over the past 24 hours, the geopolitical map has shifted dramatically as tensions between Iran on one side and the United States and Israel on the other have erupted into open military confrontation, sending shockwaves through energy markets, military alliances, and global diplomacy. Reports emerging from the region indicate that a series of coordinated air and missile strikes targeted Iranian military infrastructure, including suspected missile bases and Revolutionary Guard installations, in what sources describe as one of the largest joint military operations seen in the Middle East in recent years. Tehran responded quickly and forcefully, launching waves of ballistic missiles and drone attacks toward Israeli positions and US military facilities across the region, signaling that this confrontation is no longer confined to covert operations or proxy warfare, but is rapidly escalating into direct state-to-state conflict. As the exchange of strikes intensified, attention quickly shifted to one of the most critical choke points in the global economy, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway, located between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, carries nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply every single day. Any disruption here immediately reverberates across global energy markets, and that is exactly what we are now witnessing. Iranian naval commanders have issued statements suggesting that if the conflict continues to escalate, Tehran may restrict or completely close traffic through the strait, a move that would effectively place the world's oil supply under unprecedented pressure. Already, shipping companies are reporting delays, insurance rates for oil tankers are surging, and several vessels have reportedly rerouted to avoid the most dangerous waters in the Gulf. The economic reaction was immediate. Global oil prices spiked sharply as traders attempted to assess the scale and duration of the crisis. Energy analysts warn that if tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is interrupted for more than a few days, the world could face a major oil supply shock that pushes fuel prices dramatically higher across Europe, Asia, and North America. For countries heavily dependent on imported energy, this scenario could trigger inflation, economic instability, and even political unrest. Meanwhile, military activity across the region is intensifying at a pace that is alarming strategic planners. US naval forces stationed in the Persian Gulf have reportedly moved into heightened alert status, with aircraft carriers and missile defense systems repositioned to protect critical shipping lanes and allied territories. Israel's defense forces have also activated multiple layers of missile defense, including the Iron Dome and Arrow systems, as officials warn that additional Iranian missile launches remain highly possible in the coming hours or days. Across the Middle East, governments are scrambling to prepare for potential spillover. Gulf states, many of which host US military bases, are increasing security and monitoring airspace closely, aware that the conflict could easily spread beyond the immediate battlefield. Diplomatic channels are also working at full speed, with urgent calls for de-escalation coming from Europe, Asia, and the United Nations, yet so far those appeals appear to have had little immediate impact on the momentum of the conflict. To understand why this crisis has escalated so dramatically, we have to look at the long build-up of tensions that has defined relations between Iran, Israel, and the United States for years. Israel has consistently warned that Iran's missile programs and regional influence represent an existential threat, while Iran has accused Israel and the United States of attempting to destabilize its government through sanctions, cyber operations, and covert strikes. What we are seeing now may be the moment where those long-standing shadow conflicts have crossed a threshold into open confrontation. Military analysts caution that the situation remains extremely volatile. Iran possesses a large arsenal of ballistic missiles capable of reaching targets across the Middle East, while Israel maintains one of the most technologically advanced air forces in the world. The United States, with its global military reach, adds another layer of strategic complexity that could either deter further escalation or dramatically expand the scope of the conflict if additional forces become involved. Another key factor shaping the crisis is geography. The Persian Gulf is one of the most militarized maritime regions on the planet, with naval forces from multiple nations operating in relatively confined waters. This creates a situation where a single miscalculation, an intercepted drone, a misidentified radar signal, or a confrontation between patrol vessels could ignite an even larger confrontation. The possibility of proxy forces entering the conflict also cannot be ignored. Groups aligned with Iran across the region, including militias in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, may become involved if hostilities continue, potentially opening multiple new fronts that would stretch the crisis across a much wider geographic area. For global markets, the biggest concern remains the Strait of Hormuz itself. Every day, dozens of massive oil tankers pass through this narrow channel, carrying crude from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Iraq toward the energy-hungry economies of Asia and Europe. If Iran attempts to mine the waterway, deploy fast attack boats, or use missile systems along its coastline to threaten tankers, shipping traffic could slow dramatically or halt entirely. In previous crises, even the threat of disruption has been enough to trigger dramatic swings in energy prices. Now, with actual military conflict unfolding nearby, the risk calculations for shipping companies are becoming far more serious. Governments around the world are closely monitoring the situation because the consequences extend far beyond the Middle East. Rising oil prices can ripple through global supply chains, affecting everything from transportation and manufacturing to food prices and electricity costs. For ordinary people, that can translate into higher fuel bills, more expensive goods, and economic uncertainty that reaches far beyond the battlefield. At the same time, diplomatic efforts are racing against the clock. Several international leaders have reportedly begun emergency consultations, seeking ways to prevent the crisis from spiraling further out of control. Historically, moments like this often produce intense back-channel negotiations, where intermediaries attempt to create off-ramps for de-escalation before the conflict expands beyond the point where diplomacy can easily contain it. But as of this moment, the trajectory remains uncertain. Military movements continue. Missile alerts remain active across parts of the region, and the world's attention is fixed on the narrow stretch of water known as the Strait of Hormuz. The coming days will be critical in determining whether this confrontation stabilizes, escalates into a broader regional war, or triggers a prolonged geopolitical standoff that reshapes global energy markets and international security for years to come. For now, the message from analysts is clear. The situation is fluid. The situation is fluid. The stakes are enormous, and the world is watching closely as one of the most sensitive geopolitical flashpoints on Earth moves into a new and unpredictable phase.